Have you ever carried an image no one else could see? A green door locked at noon? A whisper telling you to turn left while everyone drags you to the right? If yes, take one breath. Seeing what others can't is a blessing and a torch that can burn the hand that holds it. Light doesn't only illuminate, it scorches. Carl Jung called this contact with the collective unconscious a storehouse of symbols that can open understanding and just as quickly inflate the ego, casting us as the chosen one in our own story. When someone becomes certain they hold pure truth, the danger isn't being wrong, it's being right in a destructive way. You live in today's America, fast, polarizing, algorithmic, where difference is clickbait, worshipped or dragged. Intuition gets commodified. Signs are treated as downloads and dreams read like orders to act. But the psyche has its own rhythm, like a heartbeat too fast and its chaos too slow. And it faints. Introverted intuition perceives hidden structure and future potentials. The farther you see, the easier you drift from collective consensus. Touch the collective shadow. What we refuse to admit and push back ignites mockery, denial smears. In that headwind, the ego loves to play prophet. I know I'm right. Listen to me. That's the razor-thin moment when vision turns into vanity, when symbols born to widen meaning are flattened into literal road signs. And yet right there in that fragile place, another path opens. If you can pause one beat from what you perceive, if you can lay it on the table as symbol rather than command, the light turns warm instead of blistering. You don't need to prove you're special. You're here to serve what is trying to take form through Jung. A dream of a knife might not say fight now, but invite you to speak one honest sentence in a meeting. A drop of water in a desert may not mean quit today, but restore, drink, sleep, breathe, then act from clarity. When symbols are honored, they unfold and nourish. When made literal, they harden and begin to rule. What in you is asking to be served, not showcased? How do I walk that warm path in a noisy world? Start with humility, not shrinking exhaustion, but reverence before what's larger than you. Next, run small tests. First, let's rename what we often call seeing the future. It isn't magic, it's a subtle function of the psyche, a quiet radar that senses patterns forming beneath the surface of events. Jung calls it intuition, especially the introverted kind, an inward-turned eye that follows threads as thin as silk yet as steady as an underground spring. Intuition isn't loud, it doesn't shout. Trust me, it taps like a heartbeat, a fleeting image, a sudden line of words, the felt sense that something's here. Trouble begins when we forget the radar only points. It doesn't steer. If the ego grabs the megaphone, every clue becomes a command, every symbol is dragged into literalism, and the light bearer turns into a fire spreader. Let's drop this into everyday American life. Elena, a product designer in Austin, wakes from a strange dream. A brand new bridge, everyone avoids choosing the riverbank instead. In Monday's meeting, her team greenlights a bridge feature to boost engagement. A chill tightens Elena's throat, the clean, cool signal of intuition. She doesn't argue. She writes down the symbol, avoided bridge. At lunch, instead of proclaiming this will flop, she runs a tiny test, one scrappy mock-up sent to 50 trusted users with a simple prompt. Would you naturally use this to cross to the other side? Many reply, I don't need it. I already hugged the shoreline faster. Honored as symbol rather than prophecy, the dream guides a humble, precise move shift from bridge to mooring, a small dock for an existing habit. What Elena saw doesn't make her a hero. It spares the team a costly loop of trial and error by listening to reality. Or take Marcus, an ER nurse in Chicago, who almost always knows which patient is about to crash before the alarms. It isn't guessing. He feels the room go still, his chest heavy as lead. One winter night, he passes bed 7 and gets a flash. The wall clock stops. He doesn't run. Shouting, he's going into arrest. He swaps the IV bag, checks the line, quietly cues a colleague to stay close. 2 minutes later, the monitor explodes with noise. Because he prepared without drama, they bring the man back. Intuition, when it stands with reality, rather than on top of it, becomes the invisible art of care. No theatrics, no declarations, just a steady hand at the right time. What separates intuition from anxiety, or from the savior script? The feel. Intuition is plain, cool, and brief. It points to a quality or a direction. Anxiety is noisy, wordy, hungry for certainty. And a puffed-up ego craves the stage, I knew it. Listen to me. If you catch your, imagine you're carrying a small lamp through a crowded room. The beam doesn't just light up the objects on the table, it also reveals the dust swirling in the air, tiny particles that were always there, but easy to ignore. That dust is the collective shadow, the shame we bury, the anger we suppress, the hunger for power. We deny the fear of abandonment we don't want to name. When you point to it, the room reacts not because you're wrong, but because light makes the dust visible. As Jung reminds us, the dark doesn't disappear when we refuse to face it. It changes shape, finds another door, and returns through projection. The second danger of seeing what others won't is the community's resistance and the echo of that resistance inside you. Let me take you into a few very American scenes. Lindsay, a high school English teacher in Denver, suggests adding emotional literacy to literature class, not just analyzing characters, but teaching students to notice the body's stress signals before they explode. Heads nod until she mentions teacher burnout and floats a once-per-semester recovery day. The room goes cold. We're not that fragile. Someone scoffs. Kids need discipline, not psychology. Lindsay's throat tightens. A voice inside says she's too sensitive. But that moment is the lesson the group is projecting its own exhaustion and not enoughness, what everyone carries but no one wants to admit. If she fires back in anger, she'll be labeled. If she goes silent, the shadow keeps drifting. So she chooses small, grounded moves, collect data on burnout, related absences, invite one colleague to try a 10-minute quiet, start before first period, then share how fights dropped after 3 weeks. When shadow is held with evidence and kindness, resistance turns into conversation. Across the map in San Jose, Daniel, a software engineer, realized his team has a habit of firing off messages late at night. Everyone quietly prides themselves on being hardcore, but Daniel's gastritis is back. He proposes a no pings after 7 p.m. rule. Pushback is instant. Global customers don't sleep. He almost withdraws the old fear of being cast out flares. A father's voice calling him timid rises from the past. He remembers the shadow lesson: when you touch a nerve, there is a delicate threshold many sensitive people cross. Once you've pushed through a group's resistance, your voice starts getting heard, even applauded. That's when an invisible crown appears. Jung called this the mana personality, the feeling of touching a power larger than yourself, as if an ancient river were pouring through your throat. It's sweet and it's dangerous. Sweet because you feel alive, clear, full of breath. Dangerous because the ego wants to seize the river and identify with the source. From here, insight can harden into command. Symbols can be forced into slogans. A community once held and warmed suddenly finds itself managed in the name of light. Let's make it concrete. In Los Angeles, a meditation teacher named Val slowly grew a small community by hosting dream-sharing circles. She was accurate, attuned, and helped people touch their deeper layers. Then one night, after a vivid dream of a firebird crossing the city, Val seemed to expand. Her voice dropped, her eyes shone. She began to speak in imperatives. You need to cut that relationship now. You must quit your job this month. People leaned in, dazzled by certainty, until 2 students spiraled into financial chaos after hurried choices. Val wasn't malicious. She got intoxicated by mana confusing. I'm hearing something with I am the chosen emissary. This intoxication doesn't roar. It's smooth as honey, especially when applause and thank yous are raining down. Up in San Francisco, a founder named Reed called product trends right for 12 straight months. The team crowned him with a sixth sense. Soon Reed ignored data that contradicted his gut, green-lighting features by hunch and labeling dissent as lack of faith. 2 quarters later, the company had burned too much cash chasing a fog. When investors asked, "Where's the evidence?" Reed snapped, "The evidence is that I've been right many times." Mana is addictive. It uses past wins to excuse skipping present verification. Feed the ego a streak of victories and it will mistake itself for the river. You'll see the same arc in religion, politics, and art. A Texas pastor starts in compassion and a few years later speaks like a prophet. A Brooklyn artist moves from honesty to tagging every critique as not real art. A Portland activist begins by protecting community and ends by dragging it behind private anger. The common thread: I have been chosen, a tiny slip repeated until a human voice. Imagine a symbol like a clay pot set in the kitchen of your life, plain on the outside, holding heat and fragrance within. It's not a neon sign shouting, "Turn left now." and it's definitely not an alarm siren. Symbols rise from the deeper layers of the collective unconscious, and their language is metaphor, movement, and nuance. When you see what others don't, you're often seeing in this language. Trouble begins when we drag a symbol down into literal orders. Jung's point still stands. A symbol widens meaning. It doesn't handcuff behavior. In short, it's a window, not a one-way revolving door. This chapter is your invitation to speak symbol, so light warms rather than scorches. Intuition guides rather than bullies, and seeing becomes transformation instead of performance. What is your symbol asking you to explore, not to obey? First, learn the difference between a sign and a symbol. A sign is like a traffic light. Red means stop, green means go, fixed, meaning universally understood. A symbol is the moon on a lake, one image, many dimensions. Light water, quiet. If you dream of a burning bridge, it isn't necessarily a verdict to quit your job tomorrow. It might be pointing to the need to burn old ways of smoothing things over, to warm a decision that's gone cold, or to stop papering the gap between two shores. Symbolic language demands the slow art of letting images unfold. Where in your life could you allow one image to ripen for a day or two before acting? A few scenes from real life. In Seattle, Camille's a product manager dreams of a giant wave rolling into the city. At dawn, she's ready to fire off a long leave email. Instead of literalizing, she asks, what are the wave's qualities? Momentum and rhythm, overflow. She sees her week as all wave-stacked meetings, no air. She translates the symbol into a way of living. Build rhythm in a breakwater. Micro actions in 24 hours, too protected. 90-minute deep work blocks. Notifications off email, windows twice a day. By afternoon, she isn't wrung out. The big wave became know-how about pacing. That's transformation. Which quality is your symbol inviting rhythm? Boundary warmth. In Dallas, Omar, a resident physician, dreams of a black snake coiling his wrist. Panic snakes mean danger, right? When he amplifies if I had to name the responsibility of the one who sees what others can't, I'd call it the discipline of 3 breaths: humility, verification, and service. Not a lofty vow, an everyday rhythm that lets light pass through you without burning you up. Humility admits what you see is always larger than you. Verification invites reality to speak alongside intuition. Service turns insight back into bread, breakable, shareable, nourishing. In Jung's cadence, this isn't moralism, it's the soul's neuroecology. When one part swells the ego, the rest of the system runs out of oxygen. Put the fire on your forehead instead of under the stove, and everyone is dazzled and still hungry. Where in your life is the light making heat but not food? Humility begins in the body. In New York, Anna, a brand strategist, has intuition that's sharp and uncomfortably often right. After a few wins, her voice shifts into deal-closing mode. Without noticing, her posture follows chin. Tipped up, shallow breaths, raised shoulders. One day, a client refuses to sign because they feel lectured. Anna looks in the mirror and spots the invisible crown. Instead of forcing humble words, she tries as a small practice before each session. Stand tall on, drop the shoulders, one hand on the belly, breathe downward until warmth spreads through the chest. She opens with a genuinely open question. What story do you want people to hear about you? No miracle spike, but after a month, the conversations are deeper, lighter. Humility isn't self-shrinkage, it's turning down the internal volume so you can hear another's whisper. Which body signals warn you your crown is on? Tilted chin, tight eyes, rapid heart. Will you try breathing into your belly before you deliver your big take? Verification is love for reality. In Minneapolis, Terrence, an urban designer, dreams a greenbelt hugging the city as if the trees want to hold people. By morning, he's ready to pitch a multi-million-dollar linear park. Then he pauses. Symbols are windows, not orders. Terrence invites volunteers to build a week. If I had to distill our whole journey, the danger of seeing what others don't, I'd say this: the most beautiful light isn't the lightning that strikes us from above. It's the flame we learn to place in the hearth to warm the house, cook a real meal, and invite people to sit down together. In this video, we've moved through the grace and peril of intuition, the waves of community resistance, the intoxication of the ego's mana, the language of symbols, and the discipline of humility, verification, service. All of it for one simple truth: seeing what others don't doesn't make us higher. It invites us to live deeper, clearer, and kinder with ourselves and with the world. When Jung speaks of the collective unconscious, he's not building a throne for the chosen. He's opening a garden with many gates. The images, the snake, the bridge, the well, the broken compass are only messengers. We decide whether to turn the letter into bread or into a slogan. Wear the fire like a crown and people will shield their eyes. Set the fire in the hearth and the room grows warm and people draw near. Maybe the seer's greatest duty isn't to rally the crowd, but to keep the flame long enough for a meal to finish, for a sentence to soften, for a small act to take root. Before we close, I invite you into a 5-minute ritual, light as breath, deep enough to anchor the mind's boat to the shore of the real. Call it crown down, light the hearth, break the bread. Minute 1, crown down, sit tall, relax your shoulders, breathe into your belly. Imagine a ring of light above your head, then gently set it down on the table. Whisper, what I see is bigger than me. I am a keeper of fire, not a god of fire. Minute 2, light the hearth. Choose one symbol that's been with you today, a still lake, a powerful wave, a bright blade. Ask, what living quality is this symbol? Inviting stillness, rhythm, boundaries, etc. Boundaries. Minutes 3 and 4. Break the bread. Choose one micro action you'll take in the next 24 hours to embody that quality. A clear and gentle phone call. A 15-minute walk without your phone, a direct but warm sentence. Write it down. No grand promises. Minute 5, share a portion. Think of one person who will benefit from that small act, a colleague, a loved one, or tomorrow's you, and offer one grateful breath. That's it. The light now has a path,